What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here with another daily video. If you guys are enjoying these daily videos, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Doing any of these, let alone all three, helps the videos to do well and ensures I can keep making these types of videos for a long time to come. If you guys are curious about any censored words in the video, I've been getting a lot of flags for inappropriate language, quote-unquote, recently, so I'm doing my best to ensure that I don't get flagged. Because I've been getting flagged pretty much immediately when I post a video, it has been affecting the channel a little bit. So if you'd like to support the channel even further, go ahead and click that join button below the subscribe button. It's only $2 a month, and you get a special symbol next to your name when you comment, and you get to use special emoticons as well. No content will ever be locked behind a paywall, of course. It's completely optional, and only if you'd like to support the channel further than you already do. Just watching this video is enough already. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video. I'll see you again at the end. Have a great day. This is something that happened back in college. I'm a woman and went to one of my best friend from college's house for her birthday party. She lived in your pretty standard college fare, a house with a few roommates. I was friends with all of them, by the way, and I lived in an apartment close by. For her birthday, she invited several friends over, and we all went to her house early in the evening. We hung out for quite a while. It sort of turned into a big party by nighttime, with a lot of other people there. A bunch of us went out to some nearby bars in the area, sometime around 9 or 10 or so. We ended up walking because they weren't all that far away, and the weather was pretty good on this night. After going to 2 or 3 different places and having been out for several hours now, we decided to head back home. Some people wanted to stay out for a bit longer, and others had already left. When we ended up walking back finally, it was just my friend and I. We were going down the sidewalk, and my friend said that she thought this guy behind us was following us. I looked back and saw a man I didn't recognize. He seemed to be around our age, perhaps a little teeny bit older. He was tall and very thin, walking about 40 feet back from us. He was not all that close. My friend said that she'd seen him staring at her in the bar multiple times. I really hadn't noticed anything myself, but I took her word for it anyway. We continued to walk back, hoping the man would simply turn off someplace or go do his own thing. But the farther we walked, the further the man followed, to the point where it started to get very concerning. We made a few random turns, and the man turned as well. These streets were much quieter, so it felt a lot more suspicious now. Once we were approaching the street my friend lived on, we decided to try and lose the guy. We took a right instead of going straight, then quickly ducked down an alleyway. For a moment, it seemed really sketchy, but we were able to cut between 2 houses and go to the next street over. This did not allow the man to see exactly where we were going. We walked down that street and went over to another block. Then we walked a little ways further before heading back to where we originally were. For the rest of the walk back, we did not see the guy, and were able to safely make it back to my friend's house. When we finally arrived, there were quite a few people there. The party was still going. Most of the people were friends, and there weren't really any random people there at all. I would say there were about 20 people in total, most of them in the living and dining room area. We hung out with some people downstairs for a while. However, I remember looking over into the living room at some point and seeing that very same random guy who'd been following us earlier. He was just kind of standing in the corner near the doorway, looking at his phone mostly. He was not interacting with anyone. I showed my friend, and we were both very creeped out. I remember that I asked several of my friends if they knew who this guy was, and nobody seemed to know. We ended up telling a couple of our guy friends who happened to play on the football team. They offered to get the guy to leave, and did exactly that. They basically forced him out of the house, and then he was gone. He did not attempt to come back for the rest of the night. I'm not sure exactly how he knew to go to that house anyway. We thought we had lost him from him following us, and nobody there seemed to know him. The only thing we can think of is maybe he waited behind a tree or some shrubbery or something, or maybe he somehow already knew where my friend lived. Either way, it's pretty creepy to think about. I'm not aware of her ever seeing that guy again, though, so who's to say? In college, I was living in an old dormitory. It was one of those buildings that had been around for ages, full of creaking floors and strange noises. I shared a room with this guy named Dave. We were both fairly normal students, just trying to get by. One night, about 2 weeks into the semester, I was working late on a paper. Dave had gone to bed early, and the room was completely quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the old radiator. Around midnight, though, I heard a faint tapping noise coming from the window. It was a little odd because the window was old and didn't close properly. The tapping was very rhythmic and consistent, though. I tried to just ignore it, thinking it was the wind rattling the frame or something, but it just kept on going. A tap, tap, tap. It was starting to get on my nerves, so I went over to the window to check out what was going on. I pulled back the curtain and looked out into the dark courtyard below. There was nothing there. The tapping stopped immediately as soon as I looked outside. I shrugged it off and went back to my desk, but after about 10 minutes, the tapping started again. This time, it seemed to be coming from inside the room. I glanced around, but saw nothing unusual. Dave was still asleep, snoring away. The tapping continued sporadically for the next hour or so, starting and stopping without any clear pattern. I tried to focus on my paper, but all the noise was making it hard to concentrate. Finally, I decided to just go to bed and deal with it the next morning. The next day, I asked Dave if he had heard anything strange the night before. He looked at me funny and said no. I thought maybe I was just imagining things, or it was some sort of stress-related issue. It wasn't until a few days later when it started to get really weird. That same week, our dorm had a fire drill in the middle of the night. Everyone was groggy and annoyed, but we went outside and stood in the cold while they checked things out. As we were waiting, I noticed that some of the students were talking about this rumor of some sort going around. They said our dorm used to be a hospital, and there were stories about it being haunted. Well, I didn't believe in ghosts, but that eerie tapping was really starting to creep me out. A few nights after the fire drill, the tapping came back, this time much more insistent, like someone was trying to get in or something. I was alone in the room that night because Dave had gone out for the evening. The tapping was loud enough now that I could hear it very clearly, even over the hum of the radiator. I went to the window again and saw nothing outside. I looked around the room, checked the closet, checked under the bed. Everything seemed perfectly normal. I tried to ignore it, but this incessant tapping just would not stop. It was getting harder to concentrate on anything else, so I decided to call Dave to see if he could come back early. He answered and said he was on his way. While I waited, the tapping grew louder and louder, and more frantic even. By now, it started to sound like it was coming from within the walls, or maybe even the ceiling itself. I was starting to get really scared. When Dave got back, he said he didn't hear anything unusual. We stayed up for a while talking and trying to distract ourselves, and the tapping eventually stopped. We went to bed the next day, and I found out that Dave did hear the same thing. He didn't tell me the truth though, because he thought it would freak me out too much and make me scared. That night, we both heard the tapping again, but this time it was different. It was more of a scratching, coming from multiple different directions. We just couldn't figure out where this unsettling sound was coming from. It seemed to be from somewhere within the walls, or perhaps the floor maybe? All at once, too. We were too scared to sleep, so we stayed up talking about it, trying to find a logical explanation. After a few more nights of these same unsettling noises, we decided to get some help. We talked to the dorm advisor, but she brushed it off as old building noises. We tried to explain that it wasn't the usual old creaks and groans you'd hear, and she promised to send someone to check it out, but nothing ever changed. The tapping continued for the rest of the semester, driving us crazy. It did seem to get quieter after a while, though, as if whatever was making the noise had gotten tired or something. We never did find out what was causing it. Some of the other students also mentioned hearing similar things, but no one really talked about it much. When the semester ended, Dave and I moved out of the dorm together and into an apartment off campus. The tapping stopped completely. We both agreed that whatever was happening was tied to that old building. Even now, when I think back on it, I still get a chill. I don't know if it was something supernatural or something that was completely explainable, but the fact that nobody could explain it to us, and it stopped as soon as we left, still makes me uneasy. I often wonder if the next person who moved into that dorm eventually heard the same things. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It's one of those mysteries that will probably never be solved. I'll always remember, though, those nights with the strange noises keeping me awake. Last semester at college, I had a scary encounter in the library of all places. It was toward the end of the semester, only about 2 weeks left of school before finals. I was getting hit hard with assignments and tests that I really needed to study for. Normally, I would do my assignments at home in my room, but the stuff I needed to complete was really piling on. Recently, I had started going to the campus library to do all my studying and homework. I had gone quite a few times now, and gotten into a groove of going a few nights every week, and staying for most of the night. It was actually quite nice. The way the library was set up, the first floor looked like your classic library, with tons of bookshelves and books. However, the second floor was just a maze of hallways, really, with a bunch of side rooms that students could rent out and study in. All the rooms would be locked, but all I had to do was show my student ID at the front desk and I'd receive a key and get a study room all to myself. On this particular Wednesday night, I got myself a room key and went upstairs to find my room number. I walked throughout the various hallways looking for my room, and eventually found it toward the back of the second floor. I got my laptop and everything else I needed set up, and then went to work. I'd been working away on homework for many hours now, and it was almost 10 p.m. The library closed at 11, so I knew I still had a bit of time to do a little bit more work. Only thing was, I needed a small bathroom break first. I made my way down the hallways toward the bathroom that was on the second floor. When I arrived at the library, some of the other study rooms had been filled with other students studying, but now they were all empty and dark. It appeared that I was the only one left, at least on this floor of the library. I finished with my bathroom break quite quickly and made my way back toward my study room. When I turned the corner and saw my study room, though, something was immediately wrong. I had left the door open and unlocked because I was only going to use the bathroom and didn't want to bring the key with me. That wasn't out of the ordinary. However, when I had left, I had definitely left the light on. Through the window, I could see that all the lights were now off in the study room, and it was filled with darkness. I stood outside the door to the room, wondering what to do next. I had most definitely left the light on, but perhaps there were some motion sensors or something, and it had turned off by itself. I wasn't really sure if we had something like that. I cautiously poked my head into the room and fumbled for the light switch on the wall. I finally found it and flicked it on, illuminating the room with light once more. I scanned around to see if anyone was in there, but it appeared to be empty. I looked at my personal items, and nothing appeared to have been stolen or tampered with either. The only thing I saw that was different from before was on the back wall, written on the whiteboard with dry erase marker. It was 2 words, "Watch you." I got chills as I read that, going over to lock the door to the room. I looked through the window out into the hallway and at the other study rooms nearby to see if anyone was there. I barely knew how to comprehend what I'd just seen. Had somebody been watching me while in the library, or watching me outside of the library as well? Regardless, I was now extremely nervous. I wanted to pack up and go home for the night. I normally walked from my house to the library, but there was no way I was doing that tonight. I called the campus safety officers and asked if I could get a ride home. For the final 2 weeks of the semester, I did not study at the library at all and was always looking over my shoulder. I never noticed anyone who seemed to be watching me, and I didn't have any more encounters like that over the last 2 weeks that I was at school. I never really thought much of getting randomly paired with a college roommate. I figured we'd be friendly, share some laughs, and maybe argue over a few small things, but nothing really out of the ordinary. When I moved into the dorm, though, I was paired with a girl named Emily, and from the very start, things felt off. Emily was very quiet, but not in a shy and reserved way. In a way that made you wonder if she might have something to hide. She didn't go out much at all, and when she did, she'd be back in no time. She kept to herself and refused to speak to me. I tried to be friendly, but she would only give one-word answers. Over time, I started to avoid her as much as possible. I did feel a bit bad about that, but it was just easier that way. One evening, I was studying in our room when Emily came in looking much more upset than usual. She threw her bag onto the bed and sat down quite heavily. I tried to ignore her, but she began pacing back and forth. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. Even though I didn't really expect an answer, she replied immediately, "Yeah, just got a lot on my mind." She immediately fell silent again. That night, I was about to fall asleep when I heard Emily's bed begin creaking. I looked at the clock and it was past 2 a.m. I tried to ignore it, thinking she was just restless. Then I heard a soft, rhythmic thumping sound. It was irregular, like something heavy being moved around. Curiosity got the better of me. I got up and peeked out of my bed. Emily's bed was moving with each thump, and I could see her silhouette through the thin partition that separated our beds. She was sitting up with her head bent forward, but I was too tired to investigate further. I just went back to bed. The next morning, Emily was already gone when I woke up. I didn't think much of it until the day after. I was sitting at my desk when I noticed something odd. The drawer of the nightstand next to Emily's bed was slightly open, which it basically never was. I could see a piece of paper sticking out of it, so I pulled it out. On it was a list of names and dates, written in Emily's handwriting. It didn't make sense at first, but then I realized they were the names of students in our dorm, and the dates were all recent as well. I started to feel a bit uneasy. I didn't know why Emily would have a list like this, and I didn't exactly want to confront her about it. A few days later, the list had disappeared, and Emily was acting like nothing had ever happened. As the days went on, she started acting even weirder than normal. I started noticing that she'd always be home, even when she said she'd be going out. I'd come back from class and her door would be closed, but I could hear these muffled noises coming from inside. It sounded like she was talking or maybe arguing with someone, but I'd never seen anyone else come or go. One night, after several days of this behavior, I was coming back from a late-night study session. As I approached our room, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. I could hear Emily's voice, but this time it was much more clear. She was talking loudly and angrily, and her door was cracked open. I could see her in the room, standing by the window with her back to me. She was talking to herself, but the way she was moving and reacting, it was like she was addressing someone else. I couldn't make out what exactly the conversation was about, but it sounded very intense. I didn't want to intrude so much, so I quietly closed the door and went into the common area. The next morning, Emily was gone again. I took the opportunity to look around her space. I felt a little bit guilty about snooping, but she was acting so weird lately that I wanted to see if I could get a clue as to what was going on. I didn't find much, just a few personal items in the empty drawer where the list had been, but there was something else underneath her bed. It was this small, old-fashioned key that didn't look like it belonged to any of the dorm rooms. I put it back where I found it and decided to just stay away from her side of the room. The days continued to go by and her behavior grew more and more strange and erratic. One evening, I was studying late and I saw her from the corner of my eye, walking around the room with this strange, intense look on her face. She had a heavy bag with her and seemed to be looking for something. I tried to avoid her, but she noticed me and gave me the angriest glare before quickly disappearing down the hallway. Things reached a tipping point one night. I was awoken by a loud banging sound coming from her side of the room. I hesitated, but decided to check it out. When I opened the door to the room, it was completely dark, and Emily was nowhere to be seen. Her bed was a complete mess, and her room looked like it had been ransacked. I went to the common area, where I saw Emily sitting alone in the darkness, holding her head in her hands and rocking back and forth. She looked up when I approached, and had bloodshot eyes with tears flowing freely. "Are you all right? What's going on?" I wanted to try and be supportive, despite my apprehension about how she was behaving. She nodded but didn't say anything, and I decided I shouldn't press any further. The next day, Emily disappeared. Her things were all gone when I woke up, and a simple note had been left on her desk, saying she was going away and would not be coming back ever again. I never did see her again either. I found out she transferred out. I still don't know what was going on with her, but the whole experience left me shaken. I learned to be careful about who I live with. I wonder if I'll ever know the real story behind her strange behavior and that weird list of names. Everything about the girl just seemed very strange and mysterious. I live by myself in a 2-story home. It's not that big, but enough space for me, and I've lived here for about 5 years now. Something really crazy happened last year. I worked pretty late one night. After getting home, I went inside of my house and was planning to go straight to bed pretty much. I went down the hallway, took a quick shower, and went to my bedroom. It was right after I got inside my bedroom that I thought I could hear the sound of a door opening somewhere downstairs. Now, obviously, I was home alone, so I didn't possibly know what that could be. I hadn't heard it that clearly, so I stopped what I was doing and listened in. I thought I could now hear footsteps, but I couldn't tell exactly where they were coming from. or where they were going. I also didn't know which door inside of my home I'd just heard opening. It clearly was not the front door though, because it sounded like it was somewhere downstairs someplace. As I stood there just inside of my bedroom, listening in, the noises quieted down, and I no longer heard footsteps or somebody walking or anything. I was still pretty freaked out about it though. After about a minute or two, I still hadn't heard anything. I got up the courage to investigate. Most of the lights inside my home were already off, so I left my bedroom and headed downstairs in the darkness. As I went, I turned on just about every light, going into one room at a time. I was really nervous. I didn't know what exactly to expect. Each room that I entered, though, I didn't see any signs of anyone inside. Eventually, I'd made it around all the rooms on the main level of my home. I was now very confused, but also relieved that I didn't find anyone. I thought that maybe I'd just been hearing things, or perhaps imagining the noises. Still, they seemed awfully real when I'd heard them. I went around and turned all the lights back out. I was finally going to go back to bed. When I got to the staircase and was about to go up, though, I heard another noise. It was the sound of a door opening, except this time, I could tell it was the door leading to the basement. I hadn't checked the basement at all when looking through my home. I realized someone must have been down there. From where I was, I could not see the door to the basement clearly. I quickly started going upstairs to get to my bedroom. As I was doing this, I could hear footsteps moving on the main level, heading in my direction. I reached the top of the stairs and ran to my bedroom. As I was going inside, I heard whoever was behind me starting to run up the stairs. Now I was extremely nervous. I locked my bedroom door behind me and went for my cell phone to dial 911. As I was doing this, the footsteps reached the top of the stairs. I told the 911 dispatcher that there was an intruder in my home. I gave them my address. Meanwhile, the footsteps got closer and closer to my room, and the person tried to open my door. Obviously, it did not open because it was locked. After trying that door, the person seemed to go across the hallway to another room. I stayed inside my bedroom and feared that the person might try anything to get into my room again. I heard the footsteps moving back down the hallway less than a minute later, and then I heard them retreating downstairs. Whoever was there seemed to have gone back down. After that, I really didn't hear anything else. When the police got there, I finally left my bedroom. They came inside and searched the entire property, including the basement, but they didn't find anyone. They also searched outside, but came up empty there as well. They did notice that my back door was unlocked. Whoever had been there had left out the back door. I never saw what they looked like, and I have no clue how they got in. Perhaps I'd forgotten to lock the back door to my house, and that's how they got inside. I can't really be sure, though. They must have been hiding somewhere in my basement the entire time. It just really creeps me out, knowing they tried entering my bedroom, knowing that I was in there. The person never came back as far as I'm aware. My family has always loved to go on a lot of hikes. Now that my siblings and I are a little older, we don't go quite as often, but every now and then we still get together for a fun family hike on a weekend. This particular Saturday, we had gone out as a family to hike this smaller mountain trail. The trail would take us to a nice view of a little waterfall in the river area. The hike was great, and at the top we stopped to eat lunch, having some sandwiches and other items we had packed. We spent some time swimming in the cool river. Then, as evening approached, we began to make our way back down the mountain to the parking lot area. As we got close to the end of our hike, however, our dad abruptly stopped us and pointed down the mountain from where we were on the trail. Even though it was a good 10-minute walk down, we could see the parking lot from our vantage point. At that time, our car was the only one in the parking lot, but in the distance it was clear to see that someone was circling our vehicle over and over. We stopped walking down the trail and just watched them as they looked through all the windows of the car. They then pulled on all the doors to see if they were unlocked. Finally, we watched in horror as the person climbed into the bed of the truck and pulled the top cover over them to conceal themselves. This seemed to really make my dad angry. He called 911, and we quickly descended the rest of the trail. As we got close to the bottom, but still a good distance away from our vehicle, my dad began yelling to get the attention of whoever was in the back of our truck. My dad yelled several profanities and said to get out of our truck and leave or else. The person hopped out of the back bed. We were close enough now to see it was a man. He walked around our truck one last time, slashing all 4 tires, then slowly walked away. He began to just kind of wander around the parking lot area, eventually disappearing into the trees sometimes, then emerging again and randomly wandering around. We couldn't leave now, because obviously he'd slashed all the tires. We tried to stay as far away from this man as possible, staying at the other edge of the parking lot, across from wherever he was. Eventually, the cops showed up and detained the guy. We found out the guy had been doing antics like this before in different spots around the area. Other hikers' cars had been messed with, and the tires slashed as well. It was a scary end to our hike, but it felt good to know the man was caught and wouldn't be able to harm any other hikers. This happened back when I was a kid. I was pretty young, I think about 7 years old or so. I remember that when I was a kid, I always loved going to Toys R Us. My parents didn't really go there too much, but whenever they did, I was sure to tag along. I have a younger sister as well, and during this time, she would have been about 3 or 4. One time, I went with my mom and sister to the local Toys R Us. I don't remember the exact reason why we were there. I don't think that I was supposed to be getting anything, though. Still, I was just glad to go and take a look at all the cool toys. It was really the only toy store I remember going to as a kid. We got there, and I was walking around following my mom and sister, looking at just about everything. Most of the time, we would go to a store. There would be 1 or 2 aisles of toys, but here it was the entire place. The store really was not all that busy. I don't remember exactly what day of the week we went or what time it was, but I do remember there not being very many other people around. After following my mom and sister for a while, I found this area of toys that I was really interested in. My mom knew that I liked it, and she was going to go to another portion of the store with my sister. I remember that she asked me if I'd like to stay in that area or come with her. Obviously, I chose to stay. I think she was going to one of the girls' aisles to get something for my sister. She told me where she would be and said she would come back and get me. Then her and my sister left. I stayed where I was, and nobody else appeared to be in the immediate area. After a while, though, I wanted to go back to my mom. I don't remember exactly why I did. I probably should have just stayed where I was and waited for her to come back, but I was young. I left the area to go and find her. I figured it would be really easy, but unfortunately for me, it was not. I got lost pretty quickly and didn't really know where I was in the store anymore. I then started to get worried that I wouldn't be able to find her at all. After walking around for quite some time, this nice-seeming woman approached me. I'm not sure how long she saw me wandering around for, but she came up to me and asked if I was okay. She was very friendly and asked me if I was looking for my mom. I told her yes. She told me that she'd just seen my mom and she knew exactly where she was. I don't know why, but I completely believed this woman. So the woman told me to follow her, and I started walking next to her. We began going down a few random aisles, and next thing I knew, we were at the front of the store and the entrance. It appeared as though this woman was going to walk right out the doors with me. As we got closer, I remember seeing this man just standing by the doors. He was alone. I remember he looked at me, and also at the woman. We were walking closer and closer to him now. I knew for sure that my mother would not have left the store without me. She definitely would have come and find me before then, and definitely wouldn't have gone outside without me. I told the woman that my mom was at the girls' aisle, but the woman just completely ignored me. I had to have told her about 2 or 3 times in a row, but she didn't stop walking and didn't say anything. Once we got within 30 feet of the door, I just stopped and turned around and ran in the other direction. The woman did not attempt to come after me. I went as far into the store as I could, and I continued to wander around on my own. Finally, I managed to notice the all pink from the girls' aisles, so I went over there. I actually did find my mom. I remember that after that, I did not see the woman or the man inside the store at all. They must have left. I also did not wander away from my mom for the rest of the time we were there. Every October, my town puts on a giant carnival. It's a pretty big deal, and they put a lot of money into it. It's always a good experience, with a ton of games and attractions. When I was younger, I would go there just about every year, but as I got older and started to enter high school, I sort of lost my desire in wanting to go. My girlfriend during high school happened to work at the carnival one year, though, and she really wanted to go with me. I went with her one night after she had finished working. The carnival was closed for the night at that point, but she knew how to operate all the games still. That meant we could still do anything we wanted. We started by going to the water gun shooting game. We would blast water at the targets. I was pretty bad at it, and my girlfriend ended up beating me quite soundly. I hopped behind the counter to go grab a prize for her on the wall of stuffed animals. There were a variety of different things, including this stuffed tiger octopus thing and a clown head. My girlfriend ended up choosing the octopus thing. She took a picture on her phone of me holding the octopus next to all the other prizes. My girlfriend loved taking photos of us together, and also just photos of me. Next, we went over to the Ferris wheel. She got a picture of me in the front of that. Also, we continued to other parts of the carnival, trying out a majority of the games, but neglecting to take any more prizes. We already had one, and that was enough. Before heading home for the night, we decided to give the mirror maze a shot. The dim lights inside had already been turned off for the night, so it made figuring out which way to go even harder than it already was. My girlfriend and I weren't really getting anywhere, as we kept bumping into each other and the mirrors. We ended up just giving up. My girlfriend snapped a quick picture of us in the mirror maze, and we went back out for the entrance. We headed home for the night. The next morning, my girlfriend had posted the picture of us together at the carnival on Facebook. I was reading through the comments on her post when I noticed that one of my girlfriend's friends had commented something asking who the friend who was photobombing us was in the clown costume. I looked back at the pictures from that night and discovered a shocking discovery. In most of the pictures we had taken, there was this clown somewhere in the background. First, at the water gun shooting game, the clown face that had been mixed in with the other prizes seemed to have been a real person standing amongst them. Additionally, in the picture of me by the Ferris wheel, they were hidden quite well in the shadows, but you could still make out the tall clown figure standing in the background. The most terrifying of the bunch, though, was the one of us together in the mirror maze. Reflected in the corner of one of the mirrors somewhere behind us was once again the clown-like figure. I quickly called my girlfriend and asked if she knew one of the workers who might have dressed as a clown for the carnival. I felt a wave of chills go through my body as she replied that the carnival hadn't ever had clowns because it was too frightening for the kids when they tested it. I can't believe how close I had gotten to the creepy clown on that night, particularly in the prize area of the first game we played, and again in the mirror maze. There were certain pictures among that bunch when the clown was only mere feet away from us, and we had no idea. I even wonder in the dark mirror maze if I'd bumped into that person a couple of times thinking it was my girlfriend. When I informed my girlfriend of the discovery in our photo roll, she ended up deleting the post off Facebook and didn't even end up working at the carnival again the next year. Now I'm extremely afraid of carnivals and mirror mazes in particular, and I've never been to another carnival since then. A couple of years ago, I was out mowing the lawn one day. I live in a house that has almost an acre of land, and I live in a somewhat quiet neighborhood. Typically, I mow the lawn about once a week or so, usually on the weekends. I have a riding lawnmower. I used to use a push mower, but just months before this story, I got the riding one, and it was so much better. My property is pretty open for the most part. The backyard has a fence that separates all parts of it from the neighbors. There are some trees and bushes, but most of them are at the back sides of the yard and the corners. My method when using the riding mower is basically to do laps around the yard. I go from the front yard all the way around to the back and keep doing that, encircling the house until I'm done. At the point that I'm done with the front yard, though, I usually have a little bit left in the back, because the backyard is ever so slightly larger than the front. I went out in the afternoon and took the lawnmower out of the garage. I started it up and began mowing the grass. I was doing my laps around, circling the house and cutting down the grass, and while I was doing this in the front yard, I saw a man walking down the side of our street. He was approaching our house, and I didn't recognize him as a neighbor. I didn't really think that much was odd about it, though, and went right back to the backyard. The next loop that I had made it back around to the front yard, the man was now in front of my home. He was on the side of the street still, but was not walking. He was just kind of standing there, and appeared to be sizing up my property. I didn't really know why he would be doing this, because I didn't know the guy. I continued and soon made it to the backyard again. By the next lap, when I'd made it around to the front, I did not see the man anywhere at all. I figured he'd continued on his way down the street. After that, I was mowing for another 20 or so minutes. I finished up in the backyard and was finally done. I drove the lawnmower back around to the front, where my garage was. I drove it back into its place and turned it off. After I got off the lawnmower, I was about to walk back inside of the house, which connects to the garage. Inside the garage, I have the typical junk that most would expect to be inside someone's garage. It's not exactly messy, but it is a tiny bit cluttered. As I was walking to the door, I hit the button to close the garage door. It was in that exact moment when something caught my eye. Off to the right, I noticed that there was a person hiding behind a trash can in the front corner of the inside of the garage. It was a man, the same guy who'd been standing in front of my house earlier. When I noticed him, I tried to play it cool. I kind of stopped and quickly kept going. I made it back inside my house and made sure to lock the door behind me. I then went to call the police. In the short time that I was waiting for them to arrive, I heard the man begin trying to break down the door leading from the garage to the house. After that, though, he did not leave. I guess he had been trapped inside. When the police arrived, the man was still there. He was captured for trespassing. I really have no idea who he was. Whenever I'd mowed my lawn, I would always leave the garage open up to that point, because I wasn't really prepared for that type of thing. It was very unusual for my neighborhood, and nothing like that has ever happened since. Still, I like to close the garage door when I'm doing my yard work now. One of my favorite hobbies has always been playing video games. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of console gaming, but in recent years, I've done most of my gaming on the PC. I have a setup in my bedroom, in the apartment that I currently live in. It's in one corner of the room opposite from my bed. Several weeks ago, I was having a gaming night with a friend of mine. We both logged on at a little after 7 o'clock. I was at my apartment, and he was at his apartment as well. It was just a little old online gaming session. We were going to go until we got tired. I live alone in my small one-bedroom apartment, which is kind of old and on the first floor of the building. After playing online for several hours, neither of us were tired yet. At this point, I'm going to guess it was around 10 o'clock or so. That's when I thought I heard a knocking at my window behind me. I had my headset on, which was noise canceling, so I couldn't hear it super clearly. I looked back to the window just to be sure. It was probably about 15 feet away from my desk and the chair I was sitting in. As I looked back, I thought I could see what appeared to be a man moving away from the window. The window looks out to a small grassy area behind the apartments. Then there's a fence between the next property and a little bit of woods before another apartment complex. In all my time living there, I'd never once seen anybody walking back out in that area, especially at this time of night. So this was really strange and suspicious. The total time that I actually saw the guy was probably less than a full second, though. He was already moving away when I turned around and looked. I told my friend I would be back in a second. I got up and walked over to the window. I looked out of it. It was pretty dark in the little space back there, but I could see just a little bit. I didn't notice anyone there. I left my bedroom and walked to the kitchen, which also had a window looking from a different angle into the same general area. It had a much broader viewpoint. I still didn't think I could see anyone out there. I figured the guy must have gone. The situation was especially weird, with it being late at night. The only explanation I could think of was the man had accidentally gone to the wrong apartment window. Maybe he was trying to get someone else's attention who he knew. I went back to my gaming chair and sat down. I told my friend about what just happened. We chatted about it for a while and decided that it probably wasn't that big a deal. Probably 30 minutes after this or so, I remember looking back to the window. My headset was still in, so I don't remember if I'd heard anything or just randomly happened to turn around. When I did, though, I saw a man standing at the window. He was peeking in. Because it was so dark outside, I couldn't make out good details of the man's face or what he looked like. Instinctively, I got up from my chair. When I did, the man immediately ducked out of sight from the window. I walked out of my bedroom into my small hallway with just a bathroom and a closet. I went right into the living room. I felt safer to be away from that window. Moments later, before I returned to my bedroom or really did anything, I heard a noise. I was standing in the hallway when this series of loud banging noises emanated from my bedroom. It sounded like the man was possibly going to try and break in. I heard several more loud bangs on the window, and I worried it was about to give in. I walked over to my door and left my apartment, going into the hallway to call the police. I told them about what happened and said I thought a man was breaking in. While I waited for the police, I went to the lobby of the apartment building near the front. I felt much better being away from my unit. The police got there minutes later. They searched my apartment and the area behind it. When I returned to my place, I saw that my window was actually broken. The man had gotten in, and several things were messed up. I was also missing several items. However, the man was able to escape before the police got there. At the end of the day, I was just glad that I left before he broke in. With the window being broken, I went and stayed at a friend's house for a while. The window got repaired pretty soon, though. I'm mad about having several of my items stolen, of course, but it didn't even add up to $100 worth of stuff altogether. The thing I'm most concerned about is that something like this will happen again. I still live in the same apartment, but luckily nothing like that has happened since then. Back when I was moving several years ago, I got rid of a lot of old furniture. There were many things that I didn't need or want anymore from the house that I'd been living in. That house was just a rental, and I had finally bought a home of my own. My rental house had 1 story and a basement, and there were 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms as well. When I was living in the rental, a lot of the furniture I got was just cheap stuff. I would either receive it for free, used, or just cheap at any old store. Some stuff I did keep, but a lot of it I just wanted to get rid of. I was actually able to sell a few things. With the things left over that I hadn't sold, I decided to just list them on Craigslist for free. I needed them gone anyway, and I needed them to be gone fast. Most of the things were not all that nice. There was a dresser, a couple old lamps, a table, and some chairs. After I made that listing, a few days went by, maybe 2 or 3. Nobody really noticed them. Finally, though, somebody contacted me, saying they would like the furniture. I was really happy that somebody was going to come take all this up off my hands. I gave them my address and said they could come by to pick it up. I told the person they might need a truck or a larger vehicle for all of it. The person responded, saying that they did. We agreed for them to come the next day in the afternoon. I hadn't moved out of my house yet, but I had gotten rid of most of the things I didn't want anymore. I already had the furniture up against the wall in the living room, right next to the front door. The following day, at around 3 p.m., I got a text from the person saying they were there. It was then that I realized that I didn't even know this person's name or what they looked like at all. I went to the window and looked out. What I saw was this younger, skinny-looking man with long blonde hair getting out of this tiny old car. Looked like a 2-door sedan from the 1990s. I had a bad feeling about this. How on earth was this guy supposed to fit all of that stuff in this tiny car? I was afraid he was going to make me drive to his place or something. The man walked up to the front step and knocked on the door. I answered and introduced myself. He told me his name was Dave. He seemed a little bit strange right from the start. I didn't know how exactly or what it was, though. I invited him inside and showed him the furniture. I told him that he could just take it now and be on his way. Dave started to walk over to the furniture, but then walked right past it and farther into my home. He sorta said something really quietly. It sounded like he said 1 second, but he didn't really say anything more. I wasn't sure as to what he was doing or where he was going. I was really confused. He quickly went out of my sight and went somewhere into the back of my home. I stayed standing there for a few moments, probably because it was just so confusing. He had gone completely out of my sight. I heard him move to the back side of the house. After that, I decided to go and see what he was doing. I heard a door open. I made my way around to the kitchen in the back of the home. Immediately, I saw the basement door was open. I called down, asking if Dave was down there. I decided to go down myself when he didn't respond. I walked down the stairs and turned on a few lights. There was some junk down there, and some boxes as well. Overall, there were quite a few places he could be hiding. The lighting down there was not very good. I started to look around and would periodically ask Dave if he was there and what he was doing. I got no answers though, and I didn't see him at all. I was getting extremely creeped out and afraid that I could possibly be in danger. After being down there for a minute or two, I decided to go back upstairs. I didn't know for sure if Dave was down there or not. He could have gone someplace else inside my home, I guess. I walked back up and went into the kitchen. When I got back, though, I heard somebody moving around down in the basement. I knew he was skulking about down there. I ran to my bedroom, locked myself in, and called the police. I stayed on the line with them all the way until they got there. They actually arrived pretty quickly. I didn't bother to look out the windows or anything to see if Dave had left, but I didn't hear him leaving. The back door was near the stairs in the kitchen, so I was hoping he would just leave peacefully that way. When the cops got there, though, they found him still inside the basement. He was arrested, and I was told that he was on drugs, and that might have explained his strange behavior. I really don't know what his plans were. I'm just glad that he didn't try to directly hurt me or anything. I studied abroad when I was younger. We went on a trip to Transylvania, which is beautiful, by the way. We stayed in this small, mostly Hungarian town for about 3 days to do some cultural stuff. We all thought it would be super fun to go find a graveyard outside of town to spook ourselves. Of course, there were no lights at all. Every sound nature makes feels like it's impending doom. There were bumps in the night all around us. All of a sudden, we heard a howling sound in the distance. Was that a wolf howling? No, it was a pack of wolves howling. We made it up to the gravestones, which were old and askew. That added a lot to the creepy factor. One of the brave guys of the group began to make ghost noises. As he did this, though, we heard the howling of wolves again. By the way, did you know that Transylvania has the highest wolf population in all of Europe? We came to discover soon just what exactly that meant. We began to hear a lot of rustling all around us, as if something was running along our perimeter, skulking about in the darkness. It was an entire pack of wolves trying to hunt us. There were 5 to 6 of us in that group, so we all stuck tightly together and sprinted back to town as we heard the wolves chasing us for quite a ways. It really scared me out of my mind. It was truly a terrifying experience, but that's about all really, I guess. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any feedback for me as well, be sure to leave that in comments below the video. If you guys have a story you'd like to send in, or if you'd like to contact me for any reasons, there will be links to my social media in the description below the video, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has one, and how you'd like to be credited in the description below the video. Please make sure to include as much detail as you feel comfortable with and try to use as much proper grammar as possible to make sure you have the highest chance of appearing in a future video. Overall, I think that's pretty much it for now, guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.